Hey gang, welcome back to Joe Daddy's Garage. Today's video is a continuation on the Triumph Bonneville T100 Scrambler that I'm putting together for a friend of mine. If you like videos like this, hit the subscribe button and the bell notification to see more. So in the first video, I went over some plans for the bike and what the owner wants to see done. And so I'm going to continue with that process. Now, also in the first video, I showed how I laid fiberglass for the seat pan. If you'll notice, there is no excess material hanging off because I've already trimmed it and separated it from the bike. I wanted to make sure it was going to go on and off before I continued with the process, because if I couldn't get it off, it doesn't do any good to continue to keep working on it. So there's still going to be more trimming later, but at this point it does, come over the sides a bit, and it will go on and off the bike. Now, I'll show you that in just a second. But along with that, I need to have it rigid, like when it's mounted. So what I did, again in a previous video, I showed where I had mounted some angle brackets to the frame of the bike, and I came back and I drilled up through the seat pan to get hole locations. So I have some plans for those as well, but I want to continue with working on this seat pan. So let me set the camera up and I'll show you some other things. So now I can take the seat pan, and pull it off. And as I had planned to do, and I showed in the previous video, I had made this 3/4 inch piece of steel. That's my guide, and also it's embedded in the fiberglass. I will be adding some more resin to this. I just wanted to make sure it was in place and working properly. And now, if I want to put it on, I just basically line it up and it pops right in. I like that. Now the next thing I need to do is get some bolts back here. I think in the previous video I mentioned that I was going to use 3/8 inch bolts. I've shied away from that. I'm going to use 5/16. The reason for that, I've made the holes 3/8 in the brackets that I installed, and they're underneath this pan here, underneath the tape, but I made the holes 3/8, and my concern was whenever you try to put this in place, is it going to have enough space? Would I have to drill those holes even bigger to make sure the bolts go through? So what I've done is I've gone to 5/16. The 5/16 fits in the hole nicely, and by doing that, I can, let's say I keep pressure on these bolts, I can lift this up and back in. So I want to make sure these bolts are going to stay in this location, and before I embed them in more fiberglass. So what I'm going to do, and this was suggested by several people on the previous video, I'm going to take a piece of scrap steel and I'm going to weld the bolts to the piece of steel. I thought about going on top, and that would probably work, but I don't want it to be difficult for the when the foam is made for it to go on there. So I'm really thinking I may do this a couple different ways. I may just butt this up against these bolts, or I may do a little cutout half moon type of deal to where I can slide this over slightly. I'm probably overthinking it. The foam is not going to make much difference, but I want to make sure that it's right. So that's going to keep the bolts from rotating after it's all embedded. I don't want them to break loose and have some problems later. So going to add some steel. Other than that, the plan is to layer this again with probably at least 2 more layers of fiberglass, just to make sure it's good and stiff. I don't want any problems with it, because once I cut off this curve, it's going to be more flexible. So that's going to be part of it, is eliminating that curve. So anyway, I'm going to get this prepped up, and then I'll work on getting more fiberglass onto the seat. So I decided to go between the 2 bolts. I cut the end slightly, like a half moon, put it between there, and I did have this, the bolts tight, had nuts on the backside holding these down tight. I've taken those off, and now if I hold this in place, no problem. So the next thing I'll need to do, again, I'll put the nuts back on these, hold them down, and get resin on this and another layer or 2 of fiberglass. So at this point, I have the bolts bonded in, and it works well to slip it on and get it down in place, but I found an issue that I need to address. Now, since this is a variation of a traditional style pan, I guess, where I want it to kind of blend up into the tank as seen in the pictures that I've shown previously, I ended up trimming these a little short. You know, I got the shape that I wanted on top, but I need some length, so I need to extend this portion. So I left all this material on the back side of the second layer, and what I'm going to do is work in some pieces of fiberglass. Now, I can't show you, I can't put it on right now because I re-waxed all of this. I made a new bridge, let's say, out of cardboard, covered it in foil tape, and then put wax on top of it so that it doesn't bond to it. So that's what I'm working on right now. I'm going to have to incorporate some more fiberglass into the panel and see if I can't make that, get that transition. In fact, that line is kind of where I want that to end so that it flows into the tank slightly. Okay, I'm doing more modifications to the seat pan. You know, typically when you look at these, it doesn't wrap around the tubing. You know, it's more flat up here. So I'm slowly whittling this down to where it feels like it should be. You know, it's more on top of the pipe rather than around it. So when I go to the front here, what I've done is I've added some more material just to fill in this little triangle here because I want to transition from the tank into that pan. But, you know, if I follow the line for the top of this, it's going to be cut a lot higher and taper into that. Along with that, I need to trim off material so that it transitions into the gas tank more correctly. Right now it's kind of on top of the tank. The curve of the tank comes down. Let me just show you. The curve of the tank comes way down here, and this part is kind of high. So I want to get down closer here. So what I'll do is I'll cut off pieces and kind of shape it down to where I think it's going to look nice. Okay, so I've kind of revised the front shape a bit. I think it works out better if I put it on the bike. I think it fits the tank nice. And I could bring this corner back just a little bit. You know, if you have any input on this, by all means, let me know. But I think this is okay. You know, the tank has a curve this direction, and I don't think it would work to back curve this. You end up with a corner, you know, down here. But at this point, I like the way that fits. I've got a gap here so that material can go underneath. The only thing that I want to change, and this is just because I had a little fight with it whenever I was taking it on and off when it had all the excess material, my insert broke loose. So I'm going to improve on that. So I'm going to put in 2 carriage bolts coming from the top side, lock this in, maybe add some more fiberglass so it's all locked in good. But that's what I'm going to do, is add those, and that should take care of that. It's not going to affect anything down here, and also it'll make very little difference here because that's where it sits. So I'm going to drill some holes and get those in place. Okay, I think that's going to work out just fine. It fits the bike like it should. It's nice. Decent transition. I may play with that just a little. You know, I may play with this shape just a little bit more, but I like the way it fits. It has a gap up here at the tank, so there'll be enough room for the padding or the covering to go over. And of course, comes off the bike easy. I did add those bolts, like I said. down bolts drop right through the brackets. So the other thing I have to do is modify this rear fender. Now of course it'll hit, you know, if I try to go into where it's at right now. So like I had drawn this line before, I'll probably do some trimming, but I know that I'm limited by what I have here. So I'll probably come up with some brackets that I can add, you know, maybe some tabs, kind of like I did on the seat, and then add some tabs and some bars so that this can be bolted up and be independent, hopefully. Should be independent of the seat. So that'll be the end of this video. I want to thank you for watching. Thank you for subscribing. You know, sometimes it's nice to do different things just to free your mind up from what you're working on. Otherwise, you know, normally I'm doing car stuff, but it's always nice to do some different things. So I look forward to sharing more on this bike. I do have the paint for the tank, so I can also work on that, but I need to address several things, you know, the fender and the other brackets and stuff underneath. But anyway, thanks for watching, and until next time, take care of yourselves. See ya.